Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with the next part of What If Naruto Had Asuras Memories. Many of you guys were demanding it, so yeah, here it is, the next part of this series. And before continuing this, if you haven't, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And a very Merry Christmas to you all guys who are celebrating out there. I know Christmas is tomorrow, but I just want to give you an advance wish. Is that what is referred to? Anyway, without further ado, let's continue with our story. Previously, your worst enemy. Ibuki introduced. The first part of the exam is a written test. There are a set of rules. Firstly, you are graded in a point system. Everyone start with 10 points. Answering the first 9 questions correctly will let you keep the points. A point is deducted for every question answered wrongly or left blank. 2 points every time you are caught cheating. This is very likely because the Chunins here beside me will act as sentinels, watching your every move. A total of 5 times caught and you and your whole team will fail. Also, if any team gets 0 points, the whole team will also fail as well. The 10th question will be given out 15 minutes before the end of the test. You have 1 hour. Hajime. The sounds of paper flipping echoed through the room as the candidates begin their test. The blonde's eyes scanned the paper quickly, determining them to be Jonin level questions. What the hell were they doing on a Chunin exam test, unless the objective was information gathering? Well, that wouldn't be necessary. Naruto's pencil hit the paper and began writing out answers as Kurama read them to him. Thanks, Kurama, Naruto said. Once he was done, the Titanic fox gave a grunt, discreetly eyeing the room. Sakura was just like him, knowing the answers, while Sayuri was surely using her Sharingan to copy the pencil movements of a Chunin disguised as a gun in front of him. Soon 45 minutes passed. Right, the 10th question is going to be given. However, you can choose whether to take it or not, Ibuki said. Not taking it would result in you and your team failing immediately. Then, of course, we'd take the question, Kiba cried. Ibuki smirked. However, if you take the question and answer wrongly, you will never be able to take the Chunin exams again for the rest of your life. At that statement, many teams gave up, leaving behind about 20. No one else? Ibuki asked with a sadistic grin. If we don't possess the courage to take the risk of this question, we are not fit to be the Chunin, Naruto answered. Ibuki smiled and clapped. Well said. All of you in this room passed the first test. What? Came many candidates' responses. As the gentleman here said, it was the test if you had the courage required for a Chunin. Many times in your job, you will have to make risky decisions that might get you and your teammates injured or killed. Courage is having the guts to take the risk and accomplish the mission. But at the same time, courage is not recklessness. You want to accomplish the mission with as little casualties as possible. In the ninja world, those who break the rule are scum. But those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. Naruto finished for Ibuki. Ibuki smiled again. That smile quickly disappeared when he had to sidestep a ball of cloth that broke through the window and unruffled into a large rectangular banner with 4 kunais tied to it on each corner. The kunais planted themselves into the floor and ceiling, holding it in place as a konichi appeared. The banner read, "The sexy and single proctor of the second test, Mitarashi Anko." The konichi stepped forward. Hey kids, your proctor for the second test, meeting at the ground 44 in 15 minutes, and don't be late. Ibuki stepped out from behind the banner. You're early again, Anko. I just want to have a more little fun with them, couldn't I? Besides, you're getting soft. 20 teams left. I will have the candidates by the end of my test. Naruto was pretty sure she meant half the number of candidates, but for all he knew, she would actually bisect the candidates. He pushed back his seat and stood up, as his teammates did, and the remaining teams. They began to fill out of the room. Ibuki was left to collect the papers on his test, for even his elite Chunins had to move on to act as the sentinels for the second test. The training grounds 44. Listen up, kiddos. The second test is a 5-day survival test in the 4th and 44th training ground, or as known as Forest of Death. Each team will be given a scroll, either heaven or earth, and you will be tasked to collect the corresponding scroll from the other teams within the 5 days. Clear enough? Anko explained. She received nods from the most of the Ganins before her. Good. Once you retrieve the scroll, go to the tower located at the center of the forest. Now, enter the tent team by team to sign the waiver and collect your scroll. We will not be responsible for any deaths in the forest. Oh yes, deaths will be common here, said Anko, enjoying the traumatized looks of the Ganin. After they were all done signing and collecting, each team was sent to one of the 44 gates along the perimeter of the training ground, where a metal fence prevented people from going in and the more dangerous things in the forest from coming out. Over each gate was a sensor, a camera, and a speaker. Anko spoke through the command center's intercom. Tip, don't die, Hajime. With that command, the metal gates swung open. Team 7 burst into the forest with a great leap. As they moved, they began to formulate plans. Naruto asked Sakura, what is the first priority here? Said Pinkest paused as she hit the branch of the next tree. Find our river? She answered simply. At the same time, she tossed the scroll of heaven to Sayuri. I see, Naruto mused. Not only is it a source of water, we can also ambush other teams along the same river. Exactly. Sayuri affirmative as she stashed the scroll into her pouch. She stepped on to the next bow as pushed off forwards, landing onto the canopy of the trees this time. Using her powerful dojutsu, she scanned the area for any sign of a river. She caught sight of a creek ahead and signaled the teammates below. 2 o'clock. They regrouped and switched directions, heading towards the river quickly. Suddenly, Sayuri, who was taking points, ground to a halt. She held up a finger to her lips, so her teammates stopped as well. Naruto extended his sensory range, finding an enemy team approaching first. 11 o'clock. ETA 20 seconds. The girls nodded and drew their weapons. Bracing themselves, they held their breath. Incoming! Naruto warned. Out of the distant tree, several shurikens came flying. Naruto deflected them away with his kunai. Just as an Ame Genin shot out the near trees, Naruto jumped into the air and spun around while executing a kick to his face. The opponent's hand shot up to the side of his face to block the kick, though the impact left him landing on his sides. With his hands, he backflipped away and going into a stance. Naruto did the same, his hands in front of his chest in a preparatory position. The Aminin's 2 teammates appeared at his sides. He then rushed into the battle, starting with a barrage of punches. Naruto sidesteps the first few, then slapped the 6 punches away. The man launched another fist to his side, which Naruto caught ease and brought up his left hand to block it, pushing it away while lunging forward. Naruto elbowed the man in the temple. The Aminin winced and attempted a kick. However, the Uzumaki blocked it quickly by raising his own foot. He snapped his foot out in a low kick, but at the same man, hand shot down to block it. Naruto made use of the momentum to flip forward instead of an axe kick. The opponent's hand now raised to push away his leg. Once it came down, Naruto maneuvered away with a couple of flips, landing near his teammates. He then charged forward at the man, throwing a kunai ahead of him. With his own, the arm again deflected it away as it spun in the air behind it. Became the subject of Naruto's substitution jutsu. The man watched in shock as his enemy disappeared and appeared behind him mid-air. Naruto thrust out his foot, sending the Aminin forward onto the surface on the huge bow. When he turned around, Naruto was already upon him. Naruto's first fist was an inch away from his stomach. With a slight snap of his wrist, the Uzumaki fist plunged into the man with enough power to break his ribs, sending him crashing into the tree behind Sakura and Sayuri. The 2 other Amenins stepped back in fear as their opponent had knocked out their teammate with taijutsu alone. Sayuri, Ikuze, Naruto exclaimed. Sayuri launched into battle, fighting the 2 remaining Ganins. She brought up her elbows to block punches from one while using her foot to defend of the other. Quickly, she stepped forward and performing an uppercut. The opponent stepped back and grabbed her outstretched arm. However, she had underestimated the Uchiha. A second later, Sayuri's knee came flying up into the stomach, followed by a full extension of her leg to break free from the opponent's grasp. Lastly, she brought her foot back with a powerful kick. The enemy Genin crashed onto the floor. Swiftly, she ducked under the swipe of the last Aminin's kunai. She grabbed and twisted the wrist and with a solid strike, disarmed the man. Said Aminin cried out in agony when his wrist was broken, trying to retreat. Sayuri wouldn't let him have such a reprieve. Her right hand shot back to the handle of her Chikoto and quickly drew it out from its scabbard. Simultaneously, she used the unsheathing motion to make a diagonal slash at his stomach. She floored with the sword and spun counterclockwise gracefully, rapidly shifting her footing for a tornado kick. It slammed into the side of the man's face. She brought her right foot down from the kick and lunging forward, utilizing her regular momentum to perform a second swipe at him. After completing the slash, she created a chidori in her left hand, twisting her body in the opposite direction. This time, she executed a glancing blow to the right to continue her combo instead of the usual assisting thrust, as that would end the battle. Though the wound was shallow, the right hand chakra made it sting like hell. She then followed through and spun clockwise, taking the time to place her left hand on her chikoto while changing her grip, channeling Chidori through it. The chakra with right hand in it, allowing her to perform the next slash with slightly more damage. Kusanagi no Tsurugi. Grass cutting sword, Chidori katana. She called out, executing a forehand upward slash with the chirping blade. She left the blade trail in a figure of 8 before returning with another strike to the left. Meanwhile, the Chidori had disappeared, replaced with a fist of fire. She spun for the last time, smiting him with the fist and following up with a sword swipe. The momentum carried both fist and sword to the left side of her body, where she put her fist onto the Chikoto. The right hand chakra was replaced with flames, letting her perform a final lethal slash. Her left hand raised to her lips and she exhaled simultaneously, with the slash creating a huge fireball which rammed into the enemy Genin and sent him crashing into the tree as a charred corpse. Sakura watched her beautiful idol with awe as she brutally cut down the final enemy. Well done, Sayuri. Let's search for them for the scroll. Not a praise, though it could definitely have been less brutal. The three Genins ransacked their enemies. Unfortunately, the scroll was a heaven scroll like their own. However, Naruto still insisted on keeping it, as you never know when it would be useful. His reasoning behind it was if they faced another team too strong for them, though unlikely, they could get away by negotiating while having a spare of their own. Tower control room. Kakashi smirked as he observed through hidden camera. Excellent work, and Genins of his team were genius in his mind. Back to Team 7. The trio arrived at the creek they were looking for. It was serene, unlike the rest of the forest, and the water flowed slowly in the 6-meter wide stream. Once he reached his bank, he kneeled down and cupped his hands, using them to scoop up water to drink. I'll set up a camp now, Naruto informed before searching nearby for sticks and leaves, which he could use to set up a shelter against the tree. Sakura followed. I'll get water. Sayuri raised an eyebrow before she thought of something. I'll catch fish. She grabbed a branch and she fashioned it into a spear and sharpened its tip. After cleaning it with water from the creek, she waited patiently. 3 minutes later, a flash of silver darted in creek. Sayuri hurled the spear at the fish, taking refraction into account. It skewered the fish right through the center. Triumphantly, she took it out and placed it somewhere to dry. She caught a total of 3 fishes, just nice for each of them. By then, they were done setting up camp and gathering water. The Uchiha entered the makeshift tent and, with a small fireball jutsu, ignited a mini campfire to cook the fishes. So, what's the next step over now? Asked Sakura as she bit into the fish. Now, Naruto pondered. I'll scout along the river for enemy teams. You guys can bathe or rest in the meantime. You can tell my shadow clone if anything happens while I'm away. The Uchiha nodded and stood up, tossing her skewer away. I'm bathing. She walked away to the river as Naruto created a shadow clone to act as a sentry. His clone scaled the tree above the shelter and found a suitable branch, high up enough with a good vantage point. The Uzumaki himself led to scout out the river. Being the only one left, Sakura decided to go to sleep after snuffing out the fire with Naruto. Kanichi no Jutsu, the Uzumaki said. In his mind, a small blue flame was about 30 meters away, but alone. Mind Eye of Kagura, he whispered. The advanced sensory technique extended his sensory range and refined the detection of chakra, being responsible for his ability to tell apart the target by age and gender. Additionally, it could differentiate different types of chakra by color and also perceive fluctuations like when the target is under genjutsu or lying. As such, it surpassed some types of dojutsu with comparable abilities, as he discovered the chakra belonged to a young female, and the chakra was awfully familiar. He sprinted towards the location at full speed based on the fear radiating off this girl. She was in deep trouble. Naruto burst out of the tree and into a clearing formed as, it seemed, the huge bear towering over the redhead girl. She had tripped over a tree root and lost her glasses in the process, leaving her even more susceptible to attack. The bear roared at her and cocked back one of its arms. "Be gone," Naruto ordered with a single fist. He stopped the bear's paw in its track. Then he grabbed one of its claw and with it flipped the entire bear over and smashed it into a tree. The dazed bear lumped away as soon as it could, for it was no match for this human. While Naruto had been dealing with the bear, the girl had managed to retrieve her spectacles and put them on. She was dismayed by his raw strength and yet frightened at the thought what he could do to her. "Who are you?" the redhead asked. Naruto noticed her fearful expression and assured, "Relax, I only came here because I detected your chakra, and it was clearly under threat." "He's a Chunin, like me," she thought before asking. "But why would you save me? Answer me this. Are you an Uzumaki?" Naruto questioned. The girl nodded slowly. "I am an Uzumaki, and my name is Uzumaki Karin." His expression brightened considerably. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, Tatebayo. I noticed your chakra was similar to mine, and thought perhaps..." It trailed off. "We're family?" "I know. I only know that my late mom was an Uzumaki. I don't know if she had relatives," Karin revealed. "Well, now that we found each other, can we keep in touch?" asked Naruto. "If I may be so bold, can I stay with you, Naruto-san? My teammates are dead and I hate my life in Kusagakure, where I'm treated like an expendable tool. I'm an orphan and they abused my powers to heal others. That was how my mother died." "Power?" Naruto asked quizzically. "When people bite my arm, Iryo chakra get released from my body and into their system. The problem is when they do this too much, I'll drain up and die." "I understand," Naruto replied. "She was being used by her villagers as a tool, just like how he was thrown through his own village as a Jinchuriki. But not right now. Maybe after the Chunin exams you can find a place to live in Konoha. Unfortunately, the Uzumakis are not a shinobi clan, so there is no clan compound for us to reside in. I suppose we'll have to settle for an apart..." "So," Karin grabbed onto me. Naruto pressed as a rush of memory entered his head. The girl was confused but did as instructed. At camp earlier, the shadow clone ears twitched as he picked up a strange sound. It sounded like a hissing. "Futon Daipora!" a raspy voice shouted. "Shimatte!" The Kage Bunshin cursed as a strong blast of wind shook the surrounding trees and tore their shelter asunder. Knowing what to do, his hands crossed in a familiar shadow clone technique. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," he whispered discreetly. A second shadow clone burst into existence. "Stay here and wait for the boss to substitute with you," the first clone ordered, before dispelling himself. Within 5 minutes, 2 Uzumakis appeared in a place of the second clone in a burst of smoke. "Karin, stay here," Naruto whispered harshly. He jumped into the dense undergrowth of the forest floor. The one who attacked was a Konoichi from Kusagakure. Wearing a straw hat, she wore a plain grey grab with black pants and a thick purple rope belt tied in a large knot behind her back, as well as a blue tomo-shaped earring. Under it was a black polo neck. She hissed malevolently as she stepped forward to face Team 7, who had gathered quickly for hearing the sound of an ambush. "This chakra is powerful and scary. So vile," Naruto thought. "Furthermore, she has no ganin in terms of chakra level. In fact, I can't even tell if she's actually female or male. There are so many conflicting signatures within one body. This is really bad." Sayuri clutched her Chikoto at his Yakigenkai flared to life. "Ah, the famous Sharingan. Show me what you got, Uchiha Sayuri," the Kusakonoichi initiated. The Uchiha scowled as she unsheathed her sword. Suddenly, she was paralyzed with fear as a huge wave of killing intent hit her, even stronger than that of Zabuza's. "This is no Kenin," she analyzed frantically. "Come on, Sayuri, stay calm. I have to calmly analyze each and every one of the enemy's movements." However, no matter what she did, there was no way she could break free from the killing intent, which held her and restrained Sakura. The only unaffected one was Naruto. "Kochi ni kite, Uchiha," the opponent taunted. A long forked, serpentine tongue flickered out of her mouth. I can't let her get to me. Not when my teammates needs me, she cried in thought. Naruto seems to be the only one who can still move. You better do something quick or we're doomed. Naruto got worried when he noticed his teammates couldn't move a millimeter from their current positions. The enemy had clearly paralyzed them with killer intent, and so it was up to him to deal with them. He dashed at the enemy at full speed, intending to blindside her. Though the enemy was surprised at his speed, she maneuvered away in it. Naruto ran up the tree trunk and kicked off explosively, launching him towards the enemy with an outstretched fist. This time the Konoichi knew that he was fast enough and caught it in arm in time. She spun one around and, using his momentum, flung him at the tree behind his teammates. What hit the tree was a long white shattered into splinters. Substitution, she realized, looking up. The shadow of Naruto fell on her. As she tried to land on her with a chop, the Konoichi stepped back and retaliated with a punch. Naruto fended it off with his forearms and switched it to a grab hand. He redirected her onto the floor. However, she quickly shot her back leg upwards, catching him in the chin. He disappeared into smoke. From the smoke, 8 more shadow clones came out to fight her. The Konoichi easily disposed of the first 3 which charged up to her, but the remaining 5 ganged up on her by stringing together a barrage of coordinated attacks. They were not simultaneous to prevent a one-shot knockout move from her, but were close enough together to overwhelm her. Eventually, it came to the point where the 5 used Sharingans on her to end the battle, the orbs grinding against her skin, tearing through it easily. The fallen Konoichi was barely thrashed, but something told him she wasn't dead yet. Firstly, her chakra signature was still active, and secondly, dead Konoichi couldn't execute killing intent, which still trapped his teammates even now. At the 5 clones dispelled, the real Naruto watched with disgust as the Konoichi jaw opened wide like a snake. Out crawled another copy of the original. The original shriveled as soon as the Kusat Karin climbed completely out of her mouth, like shedding a skin. You were better than I expected, Uzumaki Naruto-kun. I had higher expectations for Uchiha Sayuri. Unfortunately, she is simple, stunned there by my killing intent. The Kusa Konoichi hissed. Said girl's blood was raging, but no matter how much she tried, she was restrained by the killer intent of hers. Come on, Naruto-kun, she taunted. Show me the power of the greatest of the tail beast. Who the heck are you? How do you know who I am? Naruto asked. Of course I do, Naruto-kun. I am one of the Densetsu no Sanin. The boy's eyes widened. One of the legendary 3 ninjas? There were 2 males and 1 female, Jiraiya and Jirakama Sanin, Tosage, Tsunade, the legendary slug princess, and the best medic in the world, and lastly, Orochimaru, a Chunin of Konoha, who had defected many years ago from being caught carrying out unethical experiments on fellow humans. Given his name and snake-like nature, he clearly fitted the last description. You're Orochimaru of the Sanin, Naruto identified. How are you, a female right now? Yes, indeed, the Sanin rasped creepily. This is a result of one of my successful experiments. As of now, you are interfering with the collection of my specimens, so I'm afraid I'll have to take you out for a while. Naruto was getting desperate. He was clearly on a level much higher than any of one of them, and perhaps even Kakashi-sensei, for all he knew. He needed to enlist his teammates' cooperation if they were to get out of here alive. Sayuri, you have to snap out of it. I need your help. Naruto cried as Orochimaru sprinted towards him. 2 lightning-quick punches found their way past his guard, forcing him to step back and sidestep another. The Sanin bent down and swung his fist across at his face. The Uzumaki quickly bent underneath and passing foot, evading it to its left. However, Orochimaru's legs swerved back, intent on catching him again off guard. Naruto's hands flew up to his side to block the incoming foot and switched to a grip once it came in contact. The Sanin was no pushover, and with a spin, he swung himself up and over Naruto's arms. The blonde's eyes widened as soon as he knew what was about to happen. Orochimaru threw his weight forward while using his other leg to grab Naruto's arm, which was still grabbing onto his leg. With a complex twist, he landed the Uzumaki in an arm lock. He pulled hard, determined to break an arm or two. He certainly would have preferred Naruto as his host body instead, but the QB would reject him from his body, so he had no choice but to eliminate him. As Orochimaru yanked harder, Naruto began to lose feelings. in his trapped arm. It was about to snap at any moment. Sayuri, meanwhile, was watching helplessly in an abject horror. Her beloved arms was about to be broken. He had called for her help, and she failed him. Dark chakra spawned in her soul. Hatred flooded her body for this man. He called himself Orochimaru. Not a mind raced with a million thoughts a second before he finally thought to use his inheritance. He closed and concentrated in a mass chakra in his body, regenerating his system. Kuso, he cursed as he felt 5 fingers poking hard against his stomach. His eyes flew open as he saw Orochimaru's finger alight with purple flames, pressed hard on his stomach where his seal was. 5 elemental seal. Orochimaru intoned, the purple flames disappeared. Naruto felt an odd sensation as his chakra flow was disrupted. All the chakra he had been amassing earlier falling away. Based on his knowledge on Funjutsu, an odd-numbered seals placed on an even-numbered seal would cause an imbalance. As the last of his conscience faded away, he felt the sensation of being kicked to a tree trunk and being pinned there by thrown kunai to the ribcage. Sayuri's mind was raging with thoughts, bubbling with wrath which far surpassed any in vicinity. Orochimaru got up and taunted. What will you do now, Sayuri? Now that your teammate has been defeated so easily by me? If you can't beat me, you will never stand a chance against your brother. The last insult did it, breaking deep into her old memories which flooded her mind now. The old days where the Itachi was kind to her and the fateful day where it all started. This mess. She remembered the hatred, the anger, and above all, the futility of her actions as she was weak then. She had sworn to rise above it all, to overcome her weakness and to surpass her brother, and one day to avenge her parents and the rest of her clan. But even now, was she still weak? Still in the shadows of her older brother? She could not help herself from falling in love either. And even now her love had been beaten up and thrashed by this wild man before her, who dared to restrain her with his killing intent. She would show him. She would show everybody that you don't mess with an Uchiha. She spat her killing intent, overwhelming Orochimaru's and her feelings. Her eyes rose with twitch of a muscle, displaying the powerful ocular powers beneath. Oh, it was no ordinary jutsu. Her eyes were black, with 6 pointed stars resembling an atom model around its irises. Sakura was terrified by the dark aura exuding from her teammate. She was still trapped by the snake's killing intent, but it seems that it no longer affected Sayuri, and the surge in power suddenly had something to do with it. Orochimaru licked his lips. This turned out better than he ever imagined, though now with the Mangekyo Sharingan, obtaining this specimen might be a bit of work. Sayuri took a single step forward before a powerful lunge carried her straight towards Orochimaru. The Sanin dodged the fist, which whistled by. Luckily for him, though the Mangekyo Sharingan granted new jutsus, it was no different from the standard 3-tomo Sharingan in terms of ninjutsu. If Sayuri did not know how to use the jutsus, Orochimaru went on to offensive instead. Zipping at high speeds around the irate Uchiha, her head spun around quickly as her brain processed the incoming visual information to her. Orochimaru was now about as slow as a cannon. Her hands quickly shot to her Chikoto and drew it out to deflect a flying projectile. Next, Orochimaru himself came hurtling towards her, his hand poised before her, ready to strike. Sayuri wiped out her sword in front of her, bisecting the man. His chakra dispersed before her very eyes, his physical body exploding into mud. Reflexively, she ducked in time to avoid a slash from a kunai overhead. She spun around and struck the Sanin with her left fist, capitalizing on his outstretched arm from the slash. Sayuri followed up with a sword stroke. The foresight provided by her powerful eyes allowed her to dodge the next attack by dropping low. Before Orochimaru could even kick, her feet shot out in sweep. The Sanin stumbled back, enabling her to execute a mule kick next. The Uchiha leapt into the air with terrifying speed. Appearing behind the snake Sanin, she lashed onto with another slash with her Chikoto before flickering in front of her. Her Chikoto was sheathed, her hands replaced with kunais. In rapid succession, the Uchiha fired out a barrage of projectiles with flames covered on them. As expected, the Sanin dodged them easily. Some whirled past him to the tree trunk behind while others hit the ground. That's when he realized the kunais had circled the trunk and returned to a circle and bind him. The Uchiha yanked hard as the durable steel wires in her hand tightened her bind as the Sanin and skewering him to the tree trunk. She then placed the end of the wires in her mouth. Her hands flew to the wire, weaving rapid enhancements. Fire style, dragon flame jutsu. Fire chakra welled up her lungs, shooting out her windpipe. The fierce flames were expelled quickly and traveled along to the conductive wires. The fire storm reached Orochimaru and quickly engulfed him, tearing a hole through the tree. The trunk he was tied to. When he opened his mouth to scream in agony, what came out instead was identical copy, which lunged for Sayuri. A sword in hand, the Uchiha dodged the first swipe by flipping the right duck, then ducked under to second slash. Just as he was about to execute a backhand stroke, the Uchiha's hands came up to block his forearm. They quickly switched to a tight grip around his wrist. The Uchiha performed a kick to his shin, lifting him up and spinning him around by his arm. There came a point where his sword came too close and would have cleaved her face. Her Mangekyo Sharingan had interpreted the information seconds beforehand, prompting her to let go of him and leap back. The snake sun spun nimbly and landed before dashing towards her. Sayuri's hands were already reaching the handle of her Chikoto, and she pulled hard to release it from the scabbard. With a backhand grip, she blocked the incoming strike, which was aimed at her forearm. She pressed forward, tossing the sword into the air momentarily and catching it in a forehand grip. With the sword in hand, she engaged Orochimaru in a high-speed genjutsu match. He was good at the sword too, as it appeared. With a quick strike and parries, the two were pretty even. While Orochimaru was swifter, Sayuri could see through all his moves and predict them. The Uchiha decided to put an end to this with an unusual vertical backhand block. She stopped as a thrust in quick succession. She twisted her sword in a whirl and wiped it upwards, while the tip of her Chikoto made an incision on her forearm. The action disarmed the Sanin as a combination of the force at work on his sword and the pain inflicted on his wrist were enough to send his sword spinning chaotically out of his hand and flying away from behind her. Sayuri lunged as the man was screaming in agony. It was over for him. That is, until she felt a sharp pain piercing her back and coursed through her body. A metal tip emerged from her rib cage, revealing Orochimaru's sword, which had somehow found its way from mid-air to her vulnerable back. It was out of his hand and out of her sight too, unless he could control it telekinetically. She was not able to predict that, especially since it was behind her. Sayuri kneeled over and coughed up blood. The injuries were not vital, and she suspected it was because he wished to keep her alive, or else nothing would have stopped him from stabbing her hard from behind. Orochimaru's long tongue ran over his pale lips, wetting it with his saliva. Finally, his target was under control. Behold, the legendary Kusanagi no Tsurugi. The snake sun rasped, and with a wave of his hand, the sword extracted itself from her body and turned to its hand. Sayuri's eyes were in silent shock as they deactivated. This was the real Kusanagi. No wonder he could control it telekinetically. The Sanin tilted his head upwards, allowing the long sword enter his mouth and disappear into the depths of the Ospanganus. Now, my precious little Uchiha, I have shown you my strength. If you want power, seek me. We shall meet again. The wild man's hands came together in an odd handshake. Suddenly, his neck extended like a long white rope, bringing his head to her neck. Paralyzed, she kneeled there helplessly as the Sanin bit into her neck. A sharp sting ran across her neck before it dulled into a sting. The Sanin opened his jaws, releasing her from his bite as his head returned to his body. Remember, if you wish to have power to defeat your brother, simply call on my power and you'll have it, what you desire. In a blur of motion, he was gone. Sakura was released from his terrifying killing intent and ran towards Sayuri to help her, but it was too late, for she collapsed face first onto the floor, pain erupting relentlessly from the bite of her neck. Once she hit the floor, all was black for her. The pain ceased, and when her eyes flooded open, she was greeted by the sight of her clan compound. What the heck was she doing here? Out of the shadows of main house, a man stepped forward. He had long brown hair, cut short on top, and two locks wrapped in bandages, framing either side of his face. His eyebrows were cut short, a symbol of his nobility, and his eyes had blue markings around them, which were turned up at the corners. He wore a high-collared, light-colored kimono, held close by a dark sash, and collar was adorned by Magatama. He wore a black full-bodied suit underneath. Sayuri opened her mouth to speak but found she couldn't. In his eyes, a red iris was marked with a black swirl, similar to the Uzumaki clan. Sigma, greetings Uchiha Sayuri. I am Indra Suzuki. As this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And yeah, again, a very happy Christmas to you all in advance. Just wanted to wish you guys, hope you enjoy this one, and a happy new year as well. This is Apollo Uchiha, and I'm signing out. Peace.